From the great halls of their house, there assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher. Their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher. And our B-Man, the master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission? To fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. I am going to be one of the hosts for this episode, and my name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicki.
I'm Jen.
And we are back for So You Want to Be a Race Car? 101.
So you want a race car.
So You Want a Race Car. I still can't get this name right. It's like our eighth one of these things. But anyway.
Yep.
Vicki wants to get back to our roots, to our 101 roots. So we have another episode for our first-time drivers or soon-to-be first-time drivers at a racetrack. There was a survey in one of the groups that I'm in that went over what are the most common errors that HPDE instructors see. Those are people who teach high-performance driving. What do they see from their students on their first few times out there? And not that there's an issue with having them, but these are the most common things. So these are things that you shouldn't worry about because you're just one of everybody else. But we thought it would be a good idea to go over these and at least bring them to mind for you, so you knew either A, to be prepared for, or B, to prepare so you don't feel these things. But we thought this would be a great way to go.
So when you're going into an HPDE, which is a high performance driver's
Education.
because sometimes I get that last one mixed up.
Event.
Event. Sometimes they do E's differently. But anyway, when you go in, there is a lot of information that is thrown at you. A lot of it. And
you're nervous.
And you're nervous, yes. And when you go in, it's best just to focus on one or two things. You're not going to go just to a high performance driver's education, HPDE, and come out a race car driver on your first day. You're just not.
Nobody's going to sign you to your first F1 contract.
No,
nobody's going to say, "Hey, you need to come drive my car, and I'm going to pay you."
Yes, driver's educations, go on for years, and they're fun. They're track days. So when you go through this process, you just pick one or two things to focus on, knock that out, focus on the next stuff, and then as stuff becomes more muscle memory, then you start advancing.
And just because it's HPDE 1, HPDE 2, HPDE 3, HPDE 4, it doesn't mean you go to HPDE 1 and then you go to HPDE 2.
No,
not at all. I can. No. I've been in HPD 1 for a while.
Yeah,
a little bit, but
yep.
it's a when you're ready thing.
That's right.
It's not. Well, I went there last time, and I want to go to 2 now. No, it's there's a bunch of skills, and depending on where you are, what you do, how much effort you put in between events, and honestly, there's a little bit of naturalness to it. Some people can pick it up a little quicker. Some people, it's a little more for them to pick up. So don't feel bad. A lot of people, it ends up being approximately the same to go from HPD 1 to graduating HPD 4. It's just some people will take a little longer in 2, or some people will take a little longer in 3, or some people will take a little longer in 1, and then they'll just blow through the rest. It doesn't matter. It's not a race.
Enjoy your time with it. Just have a good time.
Yes. Enjoy the process.
Mm-hmm.
But we thought, since we had access to a list of the common errors that impact your driving, we thought we'd go over them so you'd at least be familiar with them and think either A, oh, what can I do to avoid that? Or B, well, I'm just normal, so don't worry about it and try not to be self-conscious. So these are broken down into several different areas, and each of us will take an area. So the first area going through is awareness. Now, these can be you're lacking the situational awareness of what's going around you, specifically the track, specifically The flags, you can't miss your flags. It's one of the hardest things to do in the beginning, but it's really critical to you being safe out there. And you need to know the cars that are out there. And you're going to be so focused on the road that's right in front of your hood, and you're going to miss all this stuff. It's just,
it's common.
It is, but it's not good. And it's overwhelming. And it's just something you just need to relax and let your vision, as you relax, your vision will broaden and get wider, and you'll notice more things and be able to watch more things. And the road that's right in front of your car, there's nothing you can do about that road. You're already going to drive over it. Too late. Look further.
I think spatial awareness is usually the first thing that kicks in.
Could be.
Just your surroundings.
The other thing would be the new driver is typically so focused on everything going around, they don't recognize when they're making any error. It could be a large error. It could be a repetitive error. For instance, when I first went out on a track, I was a serial early apex guy, which is not fast and isn't the safest thing, especially when you're first starting, because you apex early, which means you track out farther, and sometimes the track just isn't there anymore, so you run out of it. You go from the black gray tarmac asphalt to the green grass, and the green grass isn't so good. Did you guys have any trouble with either of those?
In the beginning, I did.
Absolutely.
Only because, being out there with all a bunch of cars, on your first time, number one, it's overwhelming. Number two, you're slightly terrified, but you're also exhilarated at the same time. So,
well, both of your first times were not what we would recommend now. Both of your first times were in a race. 140 cars for Vicki and 120 cars and rain for Miss Jen.
We don't recommend that.
It's not a recommended path anymore.
No, but it was fun.
It was fun to try.
Yeah. Trial by fire, I believe, is what you two call it. But and then the last awareness that factor that people is not knowing what the flags mean. Really, it seems stupid, but it's critical. You see the flag, you need to know what to do immediately. Yellow flag, slow down, be safe, don't pass anybody. Black flag, pull off. It's time to go to the pit. Red flag, pull over immediately, but not too immediately, so that somebody hits you in the back, and get out of the way because something's happening on the track and they need to get to somebody to help them. You need to. You don't have time to think about it, and you really need to know these flags.
They are the big major ones. There's minor flags that kind of pop into that you don't see too often. There's one referred to as the meatball, and
You see it often.
Right? Is that
That's your car is leaking or dropping parts, or basically you're on the Garage Harrison training team,
right?
And your car is falling apart.
Right. And there's also another one that has stripes on it, which means that you need to move out of the way because there's somebody behind you trying to pass.
The blue with the yellow stripe.
Right. But you don't really see those two flags too often unless there's track debris. There's another flag. That's the meatball.
Red and yellow.
The red and yellow. Yeah. Those occasionally pop up. The main ones you need to worry about is the yellow flag and the no passing, because they will
yellow, black, and
they take that
red.
very, very seriously. Those three.
And as you can tell, Vicki still needs to work on her flag, so it's something you constantly work on.
The minor flags, because we don't see a lot of them. Yes.
You see a lot of the blue and yellow flag at indoor go-karting events. Either somebody's really slow and they want you to move over because they don't want in go-karting, it tends to be move over. If you don't move over soon, I'm going to hit you.
Right.
So they don't want that. So.
And they'll stress those at your first HPDE also. And every time you hit the track, they will go over the flags with you.
Yep.
At your driver's meetings.
Yep. And honestly, it's part of your progression as a driver to get from HPD 1 to HPD 2. You need to know your flags. And then in HPD 2, they give you drills on flags. And if you miss a flag while you're driving, you are not eligible to progress to HPD 3 that weekend.
Yep. That is true. Okay. So we're going to go over drivers now. The biggest thing that they see with drivers doing. And one of them is that showing up at the track pumped up with too much anxiety, where you have a lot of expectation of what might happen, when all you need to do In the sense that, you can't think, you can't process, and you can't perform.
Just exhale.
Yeah. All you have to do is just breathe. You are totally safe. And when you go to an HPDE, the instructors there will easily guide you through, give you everything that you need. And, flipping that anxiety over into excitement will happen very, very quickly. Mm-hmm.
It's like when we used to play, Vicki and I used to play beach volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
The first beach volleyball tournament of the year, in the middle of that first game, you were dead.
Mm-hmm.
You were just dead tired. You couldn't catch your breath. Your legs were jelly. You were too pumped up. And then once you got through that first one, maybe the second weekend, it was like everything's back to normal. All the stress is gone. You just relax and enjoy yourself. Try to do that with this. If it means you have to, like one of our friends, they go for a run in the morning before they get in the car just to clear their mind and get a little bit of the stress out. I would go for a Slurpee in the morning just to clear the stress, and you got to do what you got to do. But that's just one of the things.
Right. So, and that actually goes with.
Jen, do you do anything to kind of get ready for that first time out?
For the first HPDE or the first race?
Just first race, first time in the car, like spring's coming, we're going to go out.
I honestly could tell you absolutely not, because I had no idea what to expect. which honestly really was not the right approach. When I went out, I just went out and I did it, and I came back in and it was fun. I had a great time, but thinking back, holy cow, like that was just like one of the dumbest things I could have done.
Well, I'm glad we could help.
But I mean, well, you're talking about the flags. You know what I mean? Like, I really didn't understand all of that. It was just strap you in and there you go. Don't hit anybody.
That's right.
So yeah, but and I mean, back when I was doing it, it didn't seem like such a big deal. But thinking back now, like just all of the safety things, all of the could haves,
The more you know.
The more you know, exactly. So yeah.
But she's talking about an actual race, though. She's not really talking about an HPDE. But
the HPDEs are very, very controlled, like you said. The very low risk. There's a lot of guidance. You're not alone. You're, even with the lead follow, you never feel alone. I mean, because they're constantly guiding you on what you need to do and watching you, so nothing happens to you.
Right.
So, yeah.
So also when you are, why are you waving your hand?
I was going to say something, but you moved on.
Okay. So also what they find is that when you are driving, is that drivers have a tendency to hold their breath. And that is because you're concentrating so much. Exhale, shake your hands off a little bit, and just relax. Because if you relax, you're able to respond in your car. I still do it to the, I'm in a level 2 HPDE, but I've been racing for 3 years now. And I have a lot of muscle memory going at the moment, and I still have a tendency to hold my breath or over clamp my hands because just the hyper focus. So take a breath and relax.
And what Vicki's saying is, on a straightaway, especially, you literally open your hand up. You're still holding the wheel, but you don't have it gripped, and you just open your hand up and relax your hands, and it'll help. One of the things I do is I touch the roof of my mouth with my tongue. It just helps center. The other reason that we were talking about, going back to the one before, the other reason that we think you should go to an HPDE first before you do your first race, even though you can, the HPDE is nice in that you go out on track, and then in most HPDE ones, you go to class and you talk about what went well and what didn't go well, and they give you a little bit more. In some places, they give you a little bit more to learn and to think about, and maybe something to do on the next one. And that back and forth, you do it 3, 4, 5 times on it every day. You do it for 2 days. By the end of the weekend, you've been in the car, let's say 8 times,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been in the class 9 times, and you feel, I think the best word is comfortable, or at least more comfortable.
So when you're talking about that, classes, maybe we should discuss about how the classes are set up and how that actually operates.
So the classes are classes. You want more detail than that? Am I? I'm sorry. I'll make sure that's nice and loud when I do the edit, by the way. Anyway, so the
I
classes.
hear the water running in the tub. Wait a
I know.
minute.
I know. Can somebody turn the water off in my bed? So the classes, how do they do this? Well, it varies from organization to organization. Usually, in the good ones, they have some type of instruction that they want to do. Usually, it'll start with, how did that last one go? What did everybody think? How did it go? Did anybody see anything out there they want to talk about? And then usually, if it's one of the better ones, they'll have some type of instruction. Some of the best ones will not only have some type of instruction, but they'll also have, hey, for this next one, let's do a drill, or hey, for the next one, try to do this, or give you something to do at the next one. So, and then some of them, honestly, the classes are people bitching about somebody else on the drive.
Basically, what it is that you spend 10 minutes in class. Sometimes you spend upwards of a half an hour in a class, depending on what.
Could be an hour.
Right. You might spend 20 minutes on a track. So you'll probably get about 4 to 8 trips on the track.
It's usually 4 per day. Roughly.
Right. Right. And then 4 in-class sessions.
Mm-hmm. After each drive. And then you'll go over, like I said, you'll go over how the driving went, any issues that were out there, and then usually they'll get into something that they're going to try to expand your driving capabilities with, either a drill or something to think about, or something to focus on, or something to try. Like, one of the drills could be, go out there and for the first 2 laps, don't touch your brakes ever. Mm-hmm. Or for your first lap, go out there and early apex everything, and your second lap, late apex everything. Mm-hmm. Every turn. Right. And see how it feels. Things like that.
Right. So the other thing about the drivers that they're seeing on our poll was that drivers that show up that aren't ready to receive information. They are there they know everything.
Type A. And
they know what they're going to do. They know that their driving is the bomb. So
they're natural.
They're not. Yeah. So they're not open to receive new information. So when you go to the track, just be open to what they have to say, get positive feedback, and accept negative. There's really no negative feedback, but
it's usually things you could do a little better.
Right. And exactly. That these are the areas you need to work on. And most likely you're going to know the areas you need to work on. you're just going to sense it.
Room for improvement.
Oh, you never, ever, ever stop learning.
So the one thing that
I think, though,
the one thing that I'm curious what your answers would be. I was a pretty good driver going in, but until I started doing HPDEs, I didn't realize how bad I was. Is that similar for you guys?
Nope.
Well, I think driving on the track and driving on the road are totally different. It's completely different. So you in many ways are unlearning everything that you're doing, like in your daily driving on the racetrack, such as braking. I mean, shifting. Everything is just different.
All right. So another issue that instructors have come to us or have listed were drivers not having a learning mentality, or they just kind of come feeling that they know everything before they walk in, and they're just not opening to new information.
Can't imagine that happening with any of the type A personalities that tend to like racing.
Yeah, I don't know why they would just come. Maybe they just want to show off their own skill,
That's
or maybe they're they're combative.
It's confirmation of their greatness.
Yeah, but the instructors are very willing to teach you whatever you need to know. So be open for it.
So the one thing I would add is that no matter how good you are, you could be better. So even if you are God's gift to driving, which I can 100% guarantee, I'm sorry to blow this bubble for you. If you haven't been on track many times, you're not.
Isn't that with everything though?
Yeah,
Can always be better.
Always be better. Just approach it that way. Even if you are God's gift to driving, you could be a second gift. So I don't think anybody on our team, since we're the in-training team, has this issue. However, always learn something. I learn something every single time I go on track, whether I'm at an HPD or not. Sometimes it's what to do. Sometimes it's what not to do. Often it's what not to do, but that's a different story.
Yes. So another area is rear view mirror drivers. They like to look a lot of what's going on behind them. Now, my particular view of driving is that the person in front basically not so much has the right of way, but it's the person behind them. It's their responsibility to safely pass.
Like in skiing.
Right. I think of it like skiing, is that you always want to focus more in front of you, and you want to be predictable. You can glance in your mirror, but don't be obsessed about what anybody's doing behind you. It is their job to make the safe pass. You can glance, give your hand signal, but don't worry so much about what's going on behind you.
A lot of times people are overly worried about being that girl or that guy. Not paying attention. So I know that when we went racing, now granted we didn't go to an HPDE with your first time on track, Vicki, or your first time on track, Jen. You guys were in a race, so it's a little different situation. But I do know that you guys tended to watch the mirror almost as much as the windshield.
There was our first race. There was a lot of chaos. 360. So, I think early on it was survival mode, I would say.
Which is going to be the case for many people on their first time on track. Jen, do you remember back in those days
I still have a problem with that.
Don't do that.
I know, but I'm still learning. But I mean, it's just it's a hard habit to break.
It is.
Because I guess when you're just generally driving on the road, you just tend to be so focused on everything around you that, but it's just different. It's different. It's a hard habit to break.
Anything else drivers are doing, Miss Vicki?
Yes. One more thing is they're getting behind the wheel, not in the best physical or mental condition in the moment.
I'm right here. Here.
Well, no, I mean, you don't have to be top physical shape to race. But I mean, you don't want to show up with a broken foot or a broken hand, obviously. But you certainly want to be rested. And there's sometimes when people show up and they've just had too much to drink the night before, and they're just, not all there. If you're going to get behind the wheel and perform at your best, you want to be
alert.
Exactly. You want to have all pistons firing, because there's going to be a lot of inputs that are going to be going on around you, and inputs that you have to put into the car, and you want to be able to react as such. And
the post-race hangover is real.
It is. But that's an adrenaline thing. Yeah, that's adrenaline.
But you need to you need to make sure you get enough sleep, and you need to not have too much fun in order to be able to handle that adrenaline drain, because it is tiring and it is all consuming. By the end of the day, you're tired, even if it's 4 times on track for 20 minutes each.
Yeah, when you're at the racetrack, you are living on adrenaline on top of everything else that you're doing. And sometimes, there have been parties. I mean, not in our situation, because we just don't do that anymore. We just can't. And then perform the next day. There was a time, but it's not now.
There was this one hot tub event where you were dressed as Cher, apparently, according to the description.
Didn't happen. Vicky's like, no.
Didn't happen.
Didn't
I don't know
happen.
what you're talking about.
Somebody who looks like you, perhaps,
Yeah.
maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very well.
Yep.
All right. So just be prepared. You're going to have some things going on at the track that you're not used to, and it will require more energy and more concentration than you're used to. So you will be tired.
Rest is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, is be well rested before you go, and nap when you're there.
Water's
If
great
you
too.
can. Yeah.
Hydrated.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. All right, Miss Jen, I believe there are more things that people can do.
I love this one because this has probably been single-handedly one of the most things that has benefited me, and they will tell you this in HPD one over and over and over and over again, and that is to look ahead. I know I'm going out of order, but chin up, look ahead, and I just have found that so helpful. So just kind of when you're driving, don't focus, 10 feet in front of you. Don't focus so much on the car that's right in front of you, but look up and look out, and it will greatly improve your driving.
Gives you more time to react.
Yes, absolutely. And
you make your markers on the horizons.
Yes.
And in the distance, and drive your car with those markers and not necessarily on the track.
Yes. So
you can practice that on real world driving too. Just force yourself to look further than you normally would. Look as far as you can.
So one of the other things is the driver not turning their head enough while cornering to spot the apex or the exit.
You're often in a position on a track you should be looking out your side windows a lot.
Right.
Not just forward.
As we're doing 101s, explain what the apex is real quick.
I always think of it as the innermost point on a turn that the car is going to travel. So you want to usually touch the apex, depending on the turn. You want to touch the apex with your inside tire. So if it's a right-hand turn, your right-hand tires, the closest point it gets to the edge of the track. Usually there's curbing there. So apex.
Yeah. And I mean, with the Hans device, you can't turn your head a lot, obviously, but
HPDEs, you don't usually wear it either.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse when you're just wearing a helmet. Try to look as far as you can down the track, and sometimes that's out your left window or your right window.
Yeah. So the other thing is following the line of the car ahead of you, provided that car's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, that's really the problem.
Keep that in mind.
They may not be doing anything right either.
Right.
Now, if it's the instructor, that's a different situation.
Well, you know what? I found that is one of the things with the whole COVID thing was doing the lead follow that I think we can all agree on that we found beneficial was actually following the coach and following their line. Versus having them in the car and kind of telling you where the line is. You could just following somebody. It really was beneficial. I think that was one of the things out of COVID that I did.
Now, when I am on a racetrack and actually racing, and I know the cars that have the good drivers in them, I will. And usually I'm not a super, super fast driver. I'm still in my training. But if I know who those cars are and I know who those drivers are, because sometimes different drivers go in and they don't perform the same, is I will try to keep up with that car and follow their line as long as I can before they pull away from me. and then I'll wait for the next one to come. And these are ones that I know that are instructors. There's instructors and they're racing at the same time on the track. So I know that I'm not getting an inexperienced driver as I'm driving behind. And through that is I learned through that also.
Sometimes different cars and different drivers will have different styles or different approaches to a line of the turn, and you may want to try it. You may find out that, on this particular turn, I shouldn't follow what the traditional line is. I should follow, there's multiple lines. I don't want to get into too much detail, but you can approach turns several different ways, and sometimes early, sometimes late, sometimes middle, apex. Depends on the turn, depends on your car, depends on your style.
So the other thing is to be overly focused on gauges, or I'm sorry, Bill,
lap timers. Those are the bane of my existence.
Well, yeah, or the mirrors.
Or the mirrors.
So
but
yeah,
don't worry about your lap time. Don't worry about your lap time. It's an HPDE. You're there to learn.
Yeah.
It'll be there when you're done.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know that you really need to focus on the gauges too much. I mean,
hopefully not.
Really,
I don't think you should have gauges in your car during HPDE anyway.
Yeah. I mean, really, you're just kind of feeling it. And
yeah.
That's why we like the Apex Pro. Those little lights.
The Apex Pro is not a bad thing, I have to admit, but I would never put a lap timer in there or anything like that. Because HPD is not so much about going fast as much as it is about going properly.
Right.
What about the
do
prize
it properly?
Money?
Yeah, right.
And actually, this last summer was the thing that I focused on. That was my goal, and what I was focused on was just getting a really good line. Like, it really wasn't going fast. It wasn't, I just wanted to be able to drive well, and speed really wasn't.
Well, if you drive really well and you start getting comfortable and start ticking it up, the speed comes with it.
Yeah.
What about the bonus for being the fastest driver of the weekend?
Oh, nope, never do that.
That never works out well.
No, usually you end up trying to be the fastest driver during an HPDE, fast laps. Sometimes you can wreck your car.
Yeah, you get to pay the tow truck driver.
Yeah,
it's a bad day.
We call it the tow of shame.
The hook, the hook of shame.
Yeah, hook of shame.
All right, so there's a couple different things that interact with the car when you're driving, and one I refer to as my left hand, and one I refer to as my right hand. But let's talk about the feet. The feet are important. I know you two have battled your feet a bit.
We're still working on feet.
So probably most important is the thing that drivers tend to do poorly, especially in the beginning, is involving the brake pedal. And there's a bunch of different things you can do wrong. Sometimes you can apply the brake too late, or apply the brake not hard enough. And I'm going to ask Jennifer, because she hates it every single time I do it. What's threshold braking, Jen?
Well, don't ask me that.
You're never going to pass the HPD.
I'm never going to pass the test.
Threshold braking is when you're applying the maximum amount of force on the brake so that you're right on the threshold of sliding. So you can't push the brake anymore, or you'd slide. Like an ABS car will never slide because the ABS will start releasing pressure. But so you don't want to apply the brake too softly. You don't want to do like normal driving brakes. You want to kind of get on the brake really hard and then trail off a little bit. And with that, you can release the brake either too early or too late. So you definitely want to control when you're releasing the brake, and that's very important. And also how fast you're releasing the brake. So those are two of the things that you really don't want to do. And I know you two are still working on, I think, confidently threshold braking and transitioning to trail braking. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
especially just trying to figure out exactly which is which.
Words.
Jennifer,
Words are hard.
I
You
know.
it's it's one of those things like you kind of know what it is. It's just to explain it is difficult.
I get, to actually put a definition to what I'm doing is difficult. I have to study it.
Yep.
I need notes.
Yep. Words are hard. That's why we run a podcast, because there's no words involved. So the other thing you don't want to be doing is when you're going on the brake, you want to apply the brake in a rapid fashion to a very high pressure, not to where you slid or skid, but then you don't want to have brake on, brake off, brake on, brake off, brake on, brake off. You want it to be one time, hold it, let it loosen up just a little bit, and then eventually release the brake. You don't want to be Thumper from, is that Winnie the Pooh or Bambi?
Yeah.
Which one
When
is
you
it?
start doing
Bambi?
Thumper. When you start doing that, what you're doing is you're unsettling the car. You're making the car rock back and forth, and you're throwing the weight around on the tires back and front, and if you're turning sideways. So basically what you want to do is you just want to have that nice even, whether it be like a forceful slowing or like I said, like the trail
like
braking.
threshold braking.
Correct.
Wow.
Or
And
like
that's probably one of the biggest differences between driving on the road
Yeah.
and braking and doing that, because
Yes.
it's so different,
Yes.
because you put so much pressure, and at the last minute,
Mhm.
whereas on the road you're coming up to a stop sign or a turn, you're just kind of slowing down and putting the brake
You're
on
coasting a little bit.
and so it really is it's the complete opposite.
It's a hard habit to break, is
It
what it
is.
is when you're
Speaking,
racing.
speaking of a hard habit to break, the other one that people do with their feet is not using full throttle on the straights or lifting prematurely, leading to coasting.
Yes, that is a problem. Yeah, absolutely.
Do
That
you know anybody who has that problem, Miss Vicki?
I might know them quite personally.
Okay.
So, but it's another habit from
Stop.
street driving to switch into race car driving. It's a habit that you have to tell yourself not to do.
Yep. And then one thing that was on here, but again, this is for DE students on their first time. I don't really think it's appropriate for a DE student, but they did have the car being disrupted by poor heel toe technique. I wouldn't want you to be heel toe technique unless you're absolutely rock solid with it on your first day on track. But if you're doing it, it can have the ability to upset your car. I know that you two are both working on it on a daily basis in your cars on your street driving.
Yeah,
But-
heel toe is usually like a more of an upper level HPDE driving.
Not
They
something
don't
to
need
worry
to
about on the first day.
No, not probably during first or probably into late second level HPDE is when they're going to start really getting you work on that.
Yep. And then the last thing, just how you can be inefficient and erratic on the brake pedal, you can also do it on the gas pedal. You can go on and off the gas pedal, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Why would that be the case, Miss Vicki? Tell me the first fundamental reason for you to go on and off the gas pedal.
Well, again, it unsettles the car. When you're racing a car, it's not like you see it in the movies.
But
When there's
why would you do it? If you go on the gas and then come off the gas, why would you come off the gas?
I'll let you explain.
Oh, okay. I'll explain. Bill, why would you do that? Because you went on the gas too soon.
Yeah.
You want to go onto the gas in a nice motion relatively quickly, but all the way down to full throttle. You don't want to give it a little gas, come off, give it a little gas, come off, give it a little gas, come off. And the reason you come off is because you don't think you can make the turn.
And again, it unsettles the car, rocks the car back and forth.
It does. And an unsettled car is not a happy car.
No.
So one thing that people do with their hands, and I did this when I first was starting, and if you look at all the the early videos, especially at New Jersey, you'd see at the end of the straightaway, right before you're going to turn in, I would start turning in too early and kind of edge the car over, which is called crabbing or cheating. And what that does is it makes you feel like you're starting sooner and you're more secure, but what it actually does is make the turn tighter because you've given up all this amount of space. And it's the worst thing you can do, but in your mind it feels like you should be doing it. So crabbing or cheating into a turn prior to where you should be turning in is a bad habit. And for some people, me especially was one of them, it was a really hard habit to break.
These are not levels that we're accustomed to. This is the hands that you're referring to is more like on your level of driving.
No, I did it from the beginning. So
okay,
these are typical issues that you have. And the reason you'll have it, I think, is on the street. You don't necessarily have to have a turn-in point. You can turn the car now, or you can turn a little later, or you can turn a little later than that. It's just a matter of it's breaking a habit that you've developed over your street driving. And my habit on street driving led to me kind of cheating over and turning in too soon.
I did not know that.
I know. You see, on this rare instance, there is actually something that I did wrong. I know you're not used to it. It's something new, and I thought I'd see how the other half lived and do something wrong just to give you humans something to talk about in your daily basis. And I'm a giver. What can I say?
It's funny.
What do you mean funny?
It's funny.
What do you mean?
So the other thing is quick wheel inputs, which means that you're just jerking your hands around too much.
Go-karts.
Yes.
Autocross.
Exactly. Something like you see in the movies.
Oh, yeah. That's good, too.
Yeah. So
video games, too.
Yeah. It doesn't work the same way in a car. Again, it unsettles the car.
Smooth.
You want it smooth because depending on what your other inputs are in your car, between your braking and your gas, which is basically keeping that car smooth and manipulating the car weight wise. If you enter in wheel inputs or you jerk the wheel too hard, you risk spinning out. So
sliding, at least. Yeah,
exactly. And honestly, it's the smoothness is what wins the races, not jerking the wheels around.
And you'll hear Ben, especially on the Dominating with Dawson. Ben's got a style where he's not terribly smooth. However, this is your first day at the track. You should not be trying to do what Ben does. Ben does it because he gets away with it and knows he can catch the car, and he's doing it on purpose. He's not doing it because he thinks
he's having a good time. He's
not thinking it looks cool. He knows how to deal with it and drive quickly that way. So that's the style that he has.
Right. And the other thing too is that Dawson drives a Miata, and a Miata is extremely forgiving on the racetrack.
And a BMW.
Okay.
Same thing though. Same comment applies.
Yeah. It might those same inputs could react differently with a different car.
Like our Mustang, that would be a bad day.
Yes.
So one thing that you want to do is when you're going into a turn, you turn into the exit, but you also want to start unwinding the wheel a little bit so that you use the entire track out. If you stay on the radius of the corner too tight, you could have gone faster because you've artificially truncated the turn and made it too narrow, as opposed to being all the way outside, going down to the apex, and then going all the way outside again. So that widens the track so you can go a little faster.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the other for you to work on.
Yeah. And the other thing is inconsistent hand position on your wheel, which, street driving
or incorrect hand position on the wheel.
Yes, that too.
I believe someone talking shortly will have that as an issue that she had at one time.
Yes, and that would be me. On my very early videos, I am driving with one hand on the wheel, one hand on the stick shift.
One hand at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
And one hand fondling our Hulk fist shift knob.
The only thing I needed was a coffee in my hand right above. I mean, honestly, that's where I was at with it. And this is me on a racetrack, which is it's embarrassing when I look back on it now. But or sitting there, shuffling the steering wheel or just kind of wiggling the knob back and forth on the shifter. What you want is you want a consistent hand on your steering wheel
Where?
at 3 and 9.
3 and 9, right?
3 and 9. Before it was 2 and 10. That doesn't give you get more control out of 3 and 9.
You have
And
more
then
range of motion.
exactly. So that's where you want your hand position. You don't want your hands everywhere else. And especially, you have to just, again, keep remembering to relax your hands,
But
because you
but
have like a death grip.
But Miss Vicki, what about my student driver taught me to shuffle steer?
Is the shuffle steer. Is that's when you're kind of doing little inputs to get steering? I don't know what you mean by the shuffle steer. I just know that
And you cross over and your hands start moving around on the wheel.
Oh, is that what that's called? No, I think
You don't need to on
no.
a track.
No. Yeah, I don't think you're doing that kind of turning on a track anyway.
You didn't say that into the microphone, so it sounded
Yeah,
like
so yeah, you don't want to do the shuffle steering. And the other thing you want to do with these steerings, you don't want to keep doing like little input steerings when you're trying to turn the car, like little shuffles to try to get it to turn. You just want to do a nice smooth.
So the biggest reason that I can think of not to do shuffle steering, which is where you're moving your hands along the steering wheel, is you don't want to ever lose track of where the steering wheel is to be straight.
Yes.
So if you don't let go of the steering wheel, you know where you are in the steering wheel and you know where straight is. If you start shuffling your hands around the steering wheel periphery, if you lose control, you're going to try to save the car, but you don't really know where the wheels are pointing because you let go. So the other thing was if you're, remember how we talked about starting outside on a turn, driving down to the apex, and then letting the car loosely unwinding the wheel slowly so that you use the entire track. The one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to artificially do that, right? It's almost like, where's the line on the track? The car should teach you where the line is. If you're at the limit, the car can only go on the line or else it'll go off the track. So what a lot of people will do is to look good in what they're good in quote marks, look good to their instructor is they'll drive down to the apex and then they'll make sure to track out because they're still all the way out to track out. And they'd be like, ta-da. If it's a right-hand turn, your wheel should never go to the left when you're first starting to get all the way out to track out. It should be the momentum of the car and the speed of the car that forces the car to go gradually in a nice arc out to the edge. Don't just steer out there and pretend, that's not the way to track out.
Correct.
So when you're at a racetrack, especially at an HPDE day, often there'll be these things called cones. Cones are there to help you until one of the race car drivers decides to punt the cone by going off the track and moving the cones. But initially what they'll have is a cone that signifies where you should start to turn in. Let's say it's a right-hand turn. So there'll be a cone on the left-hand side of the track. And that's where you should typically start to think about turning in. Then there'll be a cone on the inside right of the track, which is where your apex is. That's where you should typically go to the inside of the track. And then if the turn continues, on the outside left of the track, there'll be another cone, and that's where you should typically track out. And that's kind of defining the line with just those 3 points. Now, it's not a straight process that you connect the dots. But what'll happen is those cones are an artificial approximation. So some cars you'll need to turn in a little sooner, some cars you'll need to turn in a little later, but you'd be surprised, even if the cars are going at vastly different speeds and you're in vastly different cars, the turn-in point and the track-out point are usually about the same. So use those cones to your benefit and make sure that you don't turn in too early, which can lead to a bad day, because if you turn in too early, you tend to apex early and then you tend to run off track. Or you don't want to turn in too late, because that just makes you have to go slower or slow down more in order to make the turn, because you've now used up some of the distance, some of the angle, and some of the curve. So that's what you don't want to have.
The other thing is I briefly mentioned before is the death grip of the steering wheel. and just to have your upper body too tense. It's you're driving so stiff that that if you just relax a little bit, then your driving starts to improve. You're able to concentrate a little bit more. You have to remember yourself to do that, and just open your hands on the straight of way, kind of stretch them out a little bit, and just remember to breathe and try to relax the shoulders some.
The other thing you'll notice is if you do relax a little bit, you don't squeeze quite so much, you'll be able to feel more in your hands, and you'll also have the ability for the finer, smaller muscles to give you a little more control. The feel will give you more feedback on what's going on, and the finer control will give you the ability to control the car better. So just relax a little bit. If you notice, whenever we talk to Randy Popst on the podcast, which he'll be coming up on an episode soon or just came on, he'll grab this, he'll demonstrate the steering wheel by basically having just his pinky touch his thumb, and the other ones are pointing up in the air like an OK sign, because he wants to keep his grip on the steering wheel so light. He wants it to be very, very light, almost dainty, and you don't really need that much strength or pressure to control the steering wheel. So you want to keep it light, you want to keep it nimble, and you want to be able to feel as much as you can through the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, Vicki talked about it earlier, the smooth, you want to be smooth, you want to be continuous. You don't want to have a left turn, right turn, left turn, left turn. You want to be a nice smooth. If it's a right turn, make it one nice smooth right turn to the right, and then loosen up the wheel on the way out and have the wheel straighten itself out. You don't want to have a series of left turn, right turn, left turn, right turn, left turn, right turn. I had a friend in college. I don't know if Vicki ever met him, but I just physically could not drive in the right-hand seat because he did what I would call polygonal turns, which means if he was going around a curve, he would turn right and then straighten the wheel, and then turn right and straighten the wheel, and turn right and straighten the wheel. And it was like a whole bunch of intersecting lines as opposed to one nice smooth turn. And it would get you like Vicki does whenever she's in the passenger seat, it would get you physically sick because you're just like, oh my God, it would kill me. But do not do polygonal turns, do nice curves. Think of it like skiing. If you ski or skateboard, that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So Miss Jen.
Seatbelts.
Seatbelts matter.
They
Seatbelts
do.
save lives.
They sure do.
What do people do at HPDEs perhaps related to seatbelts?
What do they do? Well,
what errors do they possibly have?
Driver is overly bracing themselves while driving.
Too stiff. You're not too snugged in, but you're pushing against the steering wheel or maybe against the pedal or the dead pedal, and you just gotta relax a little bit. Have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nothing to worry about. Well, there is,
Okay.
but
The other thing is incorrect seating position.
so what seating position would they like to be? What would you kind of roughly where would you like to see? Like pretend you're going to instruct somebody and you take a look over.
You should put your arms out, and they should be straight on the steering wheel, like straight in front of you.
So you want your shoulder touching the seat right?
Mhm.
And you want your arms out, and the steering wheel should cross about where your wrist is. Now, typically on all the HPDEs we go to, there's always a wristband to get on the track. You want that wristband to be on the top of the steering wheel. That's going to usually it's going to feel very different from your street driving because you're usually going to be sitting much further back. But this gives you the most leverage, allows you to control the car best, and also helps you with keeping your hands in the 3 and 9 position so you can turn.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just to follow on that, so the other thing would be too far back or too far forward.
Yes.
So it's kind of like Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and Baby Bear bed. You just in the right bed.
Yeah. You want a little bend in your leg, but you don't want to be balled up and you don't want to be legs straight out in order to do pick the clutch as a key pedal. When your clutch is fully down, you don't want to have your legs straight out. That's not good. You want to still, like a 10-speed bike you want to have, or a 12-speed bike, or a 15, or whatever you've got, because bikes change. You want to have a little bit of bend in your knee.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the other thing is too much or too little seatbelt.
That's a tricky one when you've got the 3-point belt, right?
Mhm.
Because it doesn't really
Yeah.
hold you quite as much.
Right.
But you don't want it too loose. But you also need to be able to turn the wheel and do your inputs. So you want to be able to reach everything, but not flop around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last thing we have here would be the upper body lifting off of the seatbelt.
Why would that happen? Can you think of why that would happen?
It's not tight enough.
It could be. I think it's probably that you're leaning back too far or you're back too far. So you, in order to do what you need to do, you kind of have to do a sit up, which doesn't sound that terrible. But if you're doing it on every single turn, eventually you're going to be doing, 12 to 20 of these per lap. And eventually, you'll have a 6-pack like mine. It's just, perhaps not the best way to do it. Why is everybody laughing about my 6-pack? It's there.
Somewhere.
It's insulated, but it's there. It's under there.
It's in a cooler.
It's in a cooler.
Cool. Crack me up. Oh my god.
It's a 6-pack, maybe an 8-pack. You never know. And the way it's going, nobody will ever know. But that's a different story.
Mhm.
Yes, Miss Vicki, we saved one for you.
I know, shifting too frequently. This is something that I do quite often, and is something that I really have worked to try to stop because it unsettles the car. And especially if you kind of do an incorrect gear choice. Like if you're driving and you don't exactly know what gear you're in. That sometimes happens when you're overly focused and not paying attention and your muscle memory isn't quite there yet. What you don't want to do is drop it real low because that's a bad day. That's a real bad day.
See how good you are. Do you know the words yet? What's the word?
I don't know which word you're referring to.
If you're going from let's see, if you're going from 5th to 4th and instead you go 5th to 2nd, what is that type of shift routinely called?
I don't know what it's called, but I know it's that's done for the day.
That's called the money shift.
The money shift?
Yes, because
just toasted your transmission.
Engine.
Yep.
Yes, the money shift will cost you money. So,
Yes.
So Miss Vicki and Miss Jen, I think we could probably go into this a little bit more because I know this is one that you guys have trouble with. It's not necessarily that you shift too frequently. It's not that you shift too often or even incorrectly shifting the gear. It's that you yawn into the microphone. It's
I'm so sorry.
It's
Sorry
that
about
you don't have the timing down just yet for when to shift. Correct?
Correct. Now, what I've noticed too is that sometimes, even though you might want to go up to an upper gear, say a 4th to a 5th, for me, when I'm on the racetrack, sometimes that stint, even though you think you could, even just for a moment, the stint is just shorter than it should be. It's probably better you just stay, for me, I just know, in a lower gear, because if you pound it out to an upper gear and then drop it back down, I could be wrong. It just unsettles the car.
You're wrong.
Okay. Okay, for me. Okay, for me.
If you can get to a higher gear in the car that you have, you should. If you've run out of 4th, go to 5th. Unless it's like less than a second.
Mm-hmm.
Go to 5th.
Okay.
But what about your issues tend to be on the downshifting side, not the upshifting side?
They do?
They do. Well, apparently not. Apparently they seem to be on both sides. Well, when do you do your timing for your downshifts? So I'm going straight down the track, going to a right-hand turn.
Yeah, sometimes I forget to downshift completely, and then I end up slowing down and going through a turn in an upper gear, which slows my exit out, and my timing is off at that point for probably the next 2 turns.
So when should you typically do your downshift?
You should do your downshift Definitely prior to the apex, definitely prior as you're braking. Basically, you should be doing your downshift and all your footwork before you enter a turn completely.
Well, it can depend. I would say it's somewhere between turn in and apex is typical.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a tendency to either do it way early
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes not at all.
Yeah.
And Miss Jen, what about you? Yours is a little different from what I've seen. How's your downshifting going? Your sequencing?
It's better.
It is. So
Much better.
So what was your typical miss? Like it wasn't an error, it was just, getting used to it. How did you do it? Let's see if you agree with what I think I saw.
I think I was letting my foot off the clutch too fast.
Mm-hmm. You were.
Yeah.
What about the timing though? Where's your time? Where were you putting the car back into gear during a turn? You know what I mean?
No.
So you're going down. Let's go to Gingerman. You remember Gingerman?
Yeah.
So you're going into that last turn where you came out from 10A, 10B, and you're going straight at the back to the start finish, and you make that one last right turn, and you had to downshift because you went up the hill, over the hill, and then straight. It's that big long straight.
Okay.
Do you remember when you were going to make the right hand turn, you're going too fast to stay in the gear you were in? You had to downshift during that. Do you know where you were downshifting, or do you think you know where you were downshifting?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's fine. We'll work on it. That's okay.
We're in training.
You are. There's so much to learn. There is
so much to learn.
Okay, one other thing that you can think about when you're going out there, remember, if you're at your first time on track, when you're going out of the pit lane, there's typically going to be a blend line, and the blend line is strictly just a line of paint, just like on the side of the road, and it's usually going to be white. Sometimes it'll be yellow, but usually it's going to be white. You can't cross that. Just treat it as a double yellow line on the road. Don't cross that line until you're past it. The reason that's there is there's other cars coming around in that area, and you have your own road, for instance, road in quotes, and they have their own road, and they don't want you to blend together.
It's an on-ramp.
Because it's not safe. Don't cross the blend line. You'll get a black flag.
Mm-hmm.
No fun.
Nope.
And then the other thing related to the line on the track is a lot of people don't know what the racing line is, and they don't drive it consistently, or they don't drive it correctly. And correctly is in quotes. So what you want to do is you want to eventually work your way to where you're driving a consistent line that gets around the track in an efficient manner. You don't want to be inconsistent unless there's cars in the way, or cars passing you, or you passing a car. You want to be able to go over and over and over down the same path. That's all they're trying to get you to do. Consistency is important because you don't know how you're doing unless you're consistent.
Well, also predictability.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the other cars need you to be predictable. So the other thing we talked about it earlier, but it's inconsistency in the hands and the feet, wherever you're going to the brake, coming off the brake, going to the gas, coming off the gas, or how you're turning the car. You want to be consistent in how you approach those things. Those are important to getting you taken care of on the track and getting you around the track safely. You guys do pretty well on that one, by the way. Just FYI.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay. One thing that is different from track driving and street driving is your mirrors. Your mirrors are set typically differently than you use on the street. You want to have the mirrors so that you do not see the side of your car, because the side of your car is always there.
Yes.
If you have your center mirror or your rear view mirror set in such a way that you can see through the entire rear view window, and you have your mirrors such that you can see maybe even a few inches off of your car is the innermost part of the mirror, you can actually see almost 180 degrees behind you without having to turn your head. You just look at the mirrors and you can see it. So you want to see as wide a field of view as you can. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
My favorite driver aid in the car is a dead pedal. The dead pedal is the pedal off to the left-hand side of the car in the US, right-hand side if it's a right-hand drive. Oh, no, it would be on the left-hand side still. Anyway, it's off to the left-hand side. And what it does is that's where your left foot should be when it's not on the clutch or on the brake. And that gives you the stability in your seat and gives you the feel of the car and keeps you stable when you're going around the turns. You guys using your dead pedals?
Yes.
Miss Jen? You are? Nice. This is the first year where I get to drive with either one of you during an HPDE, so that should be fun. Miss Vicky's going to say, no, this is not the first year you're going to drive with me. This is not the first year you're driving with me. You are not driving with me, period.
Nope.
Anyway, it works so well on the street, though, Miss Vicky. Okay. Now, remember when we were talking about the HPD, this is your first time there and you've got these cones. Don't get married to the cones. Don't, because the cones can move. They're not trees, right? You wouldn't put a tree right next to the track. So the cones can get hit and knocked over. And a lot of times you'll see people at the HPD, they'll be using that cone and that cone moves 8 feet during the race and they'll still use that cone. And then the next time the cones move like 20 more feet down the road and they'll use that cone again. And it makes for horrible, horrible line around the track if the cone keeps moving, because 1, you're not consistent, and 2, it's a really bad line. So the cones are there as guidance, but if the cone starts to move, don't follow it like a dog. Just, you know where it was. Try to learn. Try to remember. There's a lot to remember. That's why I like taking track notes. And I like handing out track note packages to my drivers, and I like having my drivers who ignore them the entire weekend. But that's fine. You still get one. It's okay. It wasn't supposed to be funny, but it was.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing, this is kind of the other category, the miscellaneous category. If you don't know what turn is coming up next, whether it's a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn or a straightaway or a series of sweepers or a series of S-turns, you don't know the track well enough. If you don't have a picture of what's coming, you don't really know what you should be doing and how to set up for it. So that's indicative of either being overwhelmed and not remembering where you are, or not knowing where you are is relative to a track map. You need to do a little bit of homework when it's your first time going to a track, no matter if you've been to a track many, 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 many times, or if it's your first time at a track, so it's a new to you track. You need to be able to remember this. And the time that I remember this being the biggest problem for me was for those who listened at home and paid the garage sales and training at home game. You remember the debacle that was our trip to Watkins Glen for the first time, and between breaking every single car more than once, having wheels fall off of cars, and various other wonderful things, I never got to look at the track. So I'm going down the track and I'm like, is this a left or a right? I have no idea. And there's nothing quite like going 90 miles an hour into a blind turn, not knowing whether you're turning left or right. Not the most fun feeling. Although Miss Jen seemed to like Watkins Glen.
I did like Watson's Glen.
So
it was a fun track.
It was. It was even more fun when I knew it was a left turn. But that's okay. And then don't be a jerk.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of adrenaline that goes at the racetrack, but, you know, practice good sportsmanship when you're at it, because, you know, if you have poor sportsmanship, you know, and you're not doing point buys or you're not racing well with others, you kind of have this red mist that starts to take place. It just sucks all the fun, and you end up making errors or hurting somebody else.
And then you are that guy.
You are that guy that everybody.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
Or that girl.
Or that girl.
That's right. The other thing you need to do is don't get so focused on what you're doing, but actually feel what's going on. Pay attention to whether your car is understeering or oversteering. At this point, you may not even know what that means, but pay attention to whether your car is turning as much as you think it should be, or turning more than you think it should be, or whether it's sliding or going side to side, or you know, pay attention to what your car is trying to tell you, because the more you get to be, the more you get to listen, and the more you get to understand, and the more you can respond to what the car is trying to tell you, the better driver you'll be, because it does tell you stuff, whether you're listening or not. Miss Jen?
Yes.
You need to work on that.
Okay.
Okay. It's telling you stuff.
Okay. I'm listening.
All right. That's what we need to do. Are you feeling it though? Are you
I
feeling
am.
it? All right.
Listening. I'm learning.
You're feeling that car telling you.
Feeling it.
All right. Very well.
Absolutely.
You know what? You know what would be great, Miss Vicki?
What's that?
If you felt that coilover break and knew that was what made you go left.
We're not going to do that because I know what made me go left. I know what happened. Everybody keeps telling me it was a broken strut. No, I broke the strut.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree because my back's sore and I don't want to sleep in a tub tonight. And then remember, this is an HPDE event, high performance driver education. If you're at a driver education event, pay attention to what your instructor's trying to tell you. They're not jerks. They're trying to help you. They're trying to give you insight. They've usually been at the track for many, many years. They're usually very, very good. They're trying to help you. That's the only reason they're there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trying to, if they tell you you're doing something wrong, maybe you are.
I can't say that a lot of people are like that, though.
No, but some people don't want to listen to it is the problem.
They'll still take your money.
Well, true. You're going the wrong direction, Miss Vicki, but this is from the student. Okay, and then don't be late. Arrive early. I'm superiorly anal about just this one thing, in that when an HPD event goes on, and let's say it's a 20-minute session, I am waiting for the session before me to pull away to get to my spot. So I'm literally there one full session ahead of time. 5 or 10 minutes is more like a human, but my robot in me, I have to be there early, and I have to make sure go to class on time, get to grid on time, make sure your car is ready, make sure, if you have a classroom, get to the classroom on time. Don't be the guy who walks in, 20 minutes late. Try to stay to the schedule. It's a respect thing. It's a enthusiasm thing. It's an importance thing. It's like, this is important to me, and show that importance and try to show that. You don't go into work late. Well, if you do, you don't go into the same work very often, but treat it as something that you care about and something that matters, because you're usually going to be spending a few $100s doing this. You might as well get everything out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Did we miss anything?
No, I think we did well.
Okay. Just because we have a really long list does not mean you shouldn't go to an HPDE. It does not mean you should feel out of place. It's just we're trying to show you what most of the instructors have seen are typical things that some people have when they first go to the HPDE. You may have one of these. You may have 5 of these. You may have all of these. I'd be surprised if you had all of these.
Well, listen, the other thing is that the instructors, the instructors are pointing out things on all levels, not just beginner levels. So some of these pertain to HPDE 2s and HPDE 3s. But this is just their overall list of stuff that they have kind of seen. You won't know how you're going to react to an HPD until you show up and figure out what's going on. So, this is just from an instructor's point of view. It's nothing to stress out over.
Nope, don't stress out. This is just the common stuff, and this is not fatal. This is not, this isn't the list of ways that you suck. This is the way or list of things that are typically done wrong. So we're just
these are the things that they're also going to teach you when you go in there. So you don't know what you don't know.
Right. And don't be upset if you have 1 or 2 or 7. Doesn't matter.
That's why they're there to help instruct you.
That's why you're there too, because you do these things. So don't feel bad. Don't feel like, oh, this isn't for me. I should find another sport.
Or that I have to know all these things before I show up.
Either one.
You don't. No,
you don't.
You just show up with a car.
Right. We're not, we've been going to these. I've been to, I don't even want to think about how many HPDs I've been to. I still do some of these. I still have habits that I need to break. I'm still getting better. Vicki's gone to a few less. She's got habits she needs to break. She's got things she's learning. Miss Jen's gone to the same number as Vicki, but she's got other stuff she needs to learn. Everybody does. Even the guys in HPD 4 and comp school, they're learning. They're trying to get better. They're trying to get faster. The good ones are.
Never stop learning.
Nope. We'll always be in training.
Mm-hmm.
Just the font might get smaller, but that's okay.
Yep.
Get out there and have fun.
It is fun.
It is fun. Miss Jen, you having fun?
I am.
It
So
is.
much fun.
It is. So come out and have fun with us. Thanks, everybody.
Hey.
Bye.
Dominating with Dawson.
Welcome back to Dominating with Dawson with Ben Dawson.
Hello.
Oh, we have Vicki
Hi.
and Jen. Wow.
What
you
was
guys are-
that? Jennifer just chirped.
Hello.
He's like, whoop.
Just say beep beep, Jen. Very well. So, Mr. Dawson, one of the things that will help you when you're racing is to be confident in the car. Not only confident in your skill, but confident in the car itself.
That's
Agree?
true. Yeah, I agree.
So what are some of the things that you can do to increase your confidence either in your driving or in the car itself?
Number one is practice.
Practice is good.
For me, in my own experience, getting up to speed with karts when I started racing karts on dirt or with road course stuff was learning to trust that the car could go through the corner as fast as I saw other people doing with similar vehicles. I was like, I can't believe those guys are going through that fast. So, my first few laps trying to, work up to it, you had to learn to trust the tire. It feels like as fast as you see people going when you first show up, you're like, I'm going to just drive right off the edge of the track. But you kind of just build confidence in the tires. Build confidence that the brakes are going to work where they're the way they're supposed to work. You're running good brake pads. You think, I should be able to brake a little bit better than the street. So you sort of start working your way up to that. But for me, just building confidence just meant building trust in the car, and that sort of just meant driving up to it. In every instance where I've had to sort of learn a new driving discipline, you sort of go out doing a facsimile of what you think is pretty close, but usually you're pretty far off, and you had to sort of drive up to real levels where there's more consequence. Does that make sense?
It does. I think maybe we probably should bring in Jennifer and Vicki on this one.
Oh yeah.
What do you guys think would improve your confidence in the car itself? When do you not feel good about the car, and when do you feel good about the car?
Me first or Vicki?
Either. Doesn't look like either one of you want to answer.
Nobody's
I-
bristling with
when
lack of confidence.
My confidence, I think, comes from control of the car, and you had mentioned confidence in the tires, and my biggest fear, I think, is skidding and not being able to recover from that. So I think that's why the skid pad was so valuable for me, because having that muscle memory on what to do when the car, when you're losing traction,
Right.
To recover a
is
skid, right? You
huge
learn how
for
to
me.
recover.
Right? Yeah.
We've never been put in a position as of yet to learn how to recover a car.
And I
But
think
I thought
that's
you
where
people
my
rode
fear
way up
from
north with the snow.
They don't
Yeah,
do it enough.
well, and that's partly where my fear of driving in the rain comes from too. I fear losing grip.
Oh, I treasure losing grip.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
That's where we need to move to. That's the next
Yeah,
step.
I did try to take the cars out in the snow, but we just don't have the tires for it.
Yes,
Oh,
we
yeah.
do.
The trucks we do, but no, because I was trying to take out your little Miata, and it just dug itself in. It did. It was just too low. It just kept stop, cat.
That's operator error. Anyway,
That's okay. We've seen that cat's butt 20 times. I can see it a few more times.
That's right.
It's the cat's reaching around from the backside of my laptop and is touching my screen. Just the paw. Sorry.
That's right.
It's
So, Vicki,
yes.
since I'm already in the bathtub for this evening,
Bill sleeps in the bathtub. So just so everybody knows, we talk about tub time. That's where Bill has to go sleep in the bathtub because he's been a bad fellow.
I'm a bad podcast host.
So Vicky gets vroom vroom. I get beep beep. You get drip drip.
Yep, pretty much. Pretty much. Pretty much. So, what makes you confident or lose confidence in the car?
Grip.
Again?
Well, yeah, because not as of my last track day. I was starting to get very, very comfortable with it. But yeah, it's the grip, because I just don't know where that limit is, and I don't know how to recover, because apparently when you start losing control, and we've discussed this before, there's a pause. And
Your
we've
chance
never
to catch it.
a chance to catch it, and we have never experienced that yet.
The
So
envelope of grace.
Right. Right. So I haven't felt it to know what it is yet.
How did the skid pad help with that?
No.
Go back.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're definitely going back. We're going to be doing several more.
That's a
That's
really
where I
good
learned that.
point. I think
That's
if
where to
doing
pick
the
it up.
skid pad again, I would do it differently. I would put
Mhm.
more
That's it.
into it than I did the
Mhm.
last time.
I would have a different car, honestly.
You were in the turbo, so it was kind of kicking on. That kind of throws
It was
off your
kicking
whole
on and
rhythm,
off,
right?
kicking, yeah, and I kept losing the skid. So
I would put you in the FRS. Is that the
Yeah.
car you have?
86.
I would put you in the 86, the FRS. That thing would be a steady roller all day, because
Yeah.
it's also long enough wheelbase that you could kind of kick the butt out,
Yep.
catch
Mhm.
it. Yeah, because constantly at the skid pad, you're always trying to develop and find that little envelope of grace, because you're causing the failure, catching it, causing it, catching it. So it gives you a great feel for over and over. Upset, got it. Upset, got it.
Mhm.
If you didn't pick that up from the skid pad, you have more lessons to learn from the skid pad, and should return immediatamente, as they say in Italian.
Which is why I want to go back so bad.
absolutely.
And we're
I
going
mean,
to
it
be out
sounds like
on
you
the,
people own an airfield or something. Just get a fire truck out there and get that going.
well, we're going out on snow
Yeah,
tomorrow.
just go grab a fire truck.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you can rent one. Or whatever.
Just go get one.
I'm shocked if you don't have one. That's kind of a disappointment.
That's our pit vehicle. So
Line
Miss
it with sprinklers.
Miss Vicki, we will be going out in the snow tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
What about
That ought to be interesting, since it's like, I don't know, it's like 1.5 feet, 2 feet. I'm not sure
Yeah,
if you could.
You guys get the kind of snow that like makes roofs cave in. It would make our roofs cave in down here.
all right? What about your driving? What would make you guys feel more confident driving?
Skid pad.
That's it. That's the skip the races, skip the HPDs, just do a skid pad.
Well, you know what? I think it's just track time.
Yeah, everything that we've been doing.
So more.
Yeah, well, obviously the HPDEs are great, but track time. It's just
It's practice.
seat time. And I think
Yep.
the last HPD we did, it was less instruction, more track
More
time.
driving. Yep. I agree.
And that's when everything just started kicking in.
Mhm.
You broke your car.
Yeah, I mean, the one HPDE we did follow behind, trail behind, follow behind,
Lead follow.
and that was fine, and I learned a lot, but it wasn't until that instructor got out of the way and just let us drive that things started happening.
Okay. Anything you could suggest, Ben, that we should probably give him a run?
I think that the only ever answer is more and more seat time.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely.
Any drills or anything?
Not in my mind. Like, I always heard people talking about doing, like, go out and run a bunch of offline drills. Is that something you've heard before? I never actively did that myself, but it's a good idea if you're kind of feeling like you've hit a developmental plateau, or if you're sort of kind of worried about what would happen if you drive offline. Go, if you've been driving, pretty fast around the track, go knock 30% off of that and try to drive a lane off of your usual line, half a lane. Just experiment. That's a good sort of drill to try, just to put yourself out of your comfort zone.
Sure.
And one thing to do if it's at a DE event, think we've talked about this before, but if you want to try something that's going to appear a little bit out of the ordinary through the corner workers, it's a good idea to let the person at the pit out know, the person that's running the grid, as they're letting you out, maybe catch them when your group is lined up. Not as they're rolling the cars off and it's like go, but maybe wave them over to your car as you're lined up. They're calling like group 2 to the grid or whatever, and you've got a few minutes to sit there. Get there a little early if you want to try something weird. Wave the person working pit out over and say, hey, listen, I'm going to try to work on some offline driving. They'll know exactly what you're talking about, and that way they can say, they can as you roll off the grid or whatever, they'll let the corner stations know that this car is going to try some stuff that's going to look a little weird for our group. Does that make sense?
It does.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to go try. And the only answer really to get more and more confident is just repetition, in my opinion. You show up your first few track events or your first few races, and you're just gonna be scared to death. And as you practice more and more, the fear and apprehension gets replaced by the skills you're building. And then as you build them faster and you get faster and faster and you build more and more competence, then sort of the wanting to learn gets replaced by, I want to go faster than that person. And
Right.
that's where shit really kicks off.
Well, I think that, the track time is where the muscle memory kicks in. Other than that, and all the HPDEs, what you're doing is you're trying to process new information while you're on track, but
Right.
it's not going to happen until you start implementing, and that stuff becomes second nature.
You're speaking a whole new language with not just, you're not speaking a whole new language, but you're learning a whole new set of motions and a whole new way of operating something. So that's a whole, it's like on the job training, or it should be. But almost none of us, I think Ian was talking about this when we had him on the podcast, Ian Korf, the guy who does the You Suck at Racing book and the blog series. He was talking about this.
We sold some of those,
That's great. I hope so.
You should have like an extra $1.
He's probably got a whole $1 in his pocket. But he mentioned this, and I haven't really thought about it this way because I've been doing this for so long. But if you were training for this like you were training for a job, that could easily be dangerous and very consequential, like driving on the track or racing is. If it was really a job you're doing, you'd have a whole lot of training, and that's what it takes to get really good at it. So there's really no replacement for going out and doing a bunch of it. But also, that doesn't mean that there's nowhere to start either. You have to start and kind of get into it. But just know that as you're starting and you feel apprehensive about every single thing involved with it, from the tire pressure to bring the right tools. Like there's stuff outside and inside the car. There's plenty of stuff to stress you out, but like the video series from 10 years ago or whatever, it gets easier. It really does.
And from everybody who was racing, and I kind of look at it like a video game. It's like when you step into it, there's so much you don't know in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But like maybe I don't know, you're 30 hours in or 10 hours into a game, because they last for months, depending on how, but I mean, the more you get into it, the more everything starts to become second nature, and you're kind of moving your controls. You're not even thinking about stuff. You're not even thinking about what you're doing with your hands anymore. And
you assimilate it.
Right. And when you first step on the track and of course, when you first show up at racing, like you said, there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of inputs. There's a lot of moving parts, and your head is all over the place. And when you're sitting in the car, there's a lot of separate inputs in the very beginning that you're focused on that is so distracting, and it's so exhausting. And then the longer that you're in it, all those movements that you're doing with your car, you don't even think about it anymore. And now you're focusing and you're moving on to more important things. You're starting to move on to strategy now, because you're already working. Your body's already doing stuff that you're not forcing it to do anymore.
Look at that. You've been doing this stuff long enough now that you're parroting my talking points from like a million episodes ago.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
You're saying exactly the stuff I used to always say about what we ought to be doing. So this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we know it's not from listening to the episode, so that's good.
That's a long time ago. I used to say a lot of that kind of stuff to you guys. And there you are doing it.
Yeah, I'm going to turn the shower on too.
Watch out if you hear
right when he's sleeping. No,
see your
you know
hands
what?
your way with the toaster. Run.
No, I'm not going to turn the shower on. I'm just going to turn I'm going to turn the faucet on just very slowly and put the plug on. Just very low.
My faucets are dripping right now.
Right. Well, so for the next segment of Dominating with Dawson, I will have pruny hands.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
We have a pruny butt.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Wow. Such a challenging edit.
You know the sad part is she did the effort to come off of mute and everything to get that in. Just, that was greatly appreciated.
Unmuted for that. That's got to stay in.
It does.
The butt stays in the picture.
That's right.
That wasn't a cuss word.
It's the first time you haven't used one tonight. So thanks everybody except Vicki.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.